Dzień za dniem, noc za nocą, nasze życie upływa pod bezkresnym niebem. Marzymy o rzeczach wielkich, ale życzymy sobie rzeczy prostych. Myślami wybiegamy do przodu, ale jesteśmy świadomi, że życie toczy się tu i teraz. Spoglądamy w niebo z dobrego miejsca na ziemi.
Kujawsko-Pomorska e-Szkoła. Witamy bardzo serdecznie. Tym razem uczniów klasy drugiej liceum ogólnokształcącego. Zapraszamy oczywiście na język angielski. Jest już z nami pan profesor Maciej Doksa. Witamy serdecznie.
Good morning, students. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to talk about the environment, about the dangers or threats to the environment and how we destroy it, but also about the chances for the environment, what we can do to save it, to protect it against destruction. So, the first part of the lesson will be about the destruction of the natural environment, so how we destroy the environment, what do we do to it. So first of all, we dump sewage into rivers, lakes and seas. What does it mean? Sewage. Sewage is this liquid that we produce, which is dirty. We produce it in our toilets, we produce it in our kitchens, we produce it in factories. It's, in simple words, is the dirty water, polluted water, ścieki. In Polish, dump means throw it away. Zrzucać, wyrzucać, odprowadzać. So we dump sewage into rivers, lakes and seas. Of course, this sewage is very dangerous to the natural environment because you have to remember that rivers, lakes and seas are ecosystems, are habitats for wildlife, for plant life. So dumping sewage into these habitats at the same time simultaneously means that we are harming the wildlife. We also use chemical fertilizers in agriculture. It is very, very common. It is widespread. Without chemical fertilizers, the food production would be much lower. However, these fertilizers are very often washed away into the little streams, then bigger rivers, and they end up in the lakes, they end up in the seas, in the oceans. The problem is that fertilizers, nawozy, cause the growth of various organisms which are not very desirable or very useful for these ecosystems, like for example the algae, which can take up oxygen and as a consequence kill other animals. Another problem is the air pollution. Believe it or not, but annually we emit about 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is one of the main reasons, or the main reason of the greenhouse effect. It is hard to believe because carbon dioxide, CO2, dwutlenek węgla, is a gas. It's a gas that is transparent, so we do not see it, so we tend to believe that it weighs nothing. Yes, because it is like the air, it is so light that, but believe it or not, we produce it so much that it amounts to the total of 40 billion tons per year. So you can imagine how much actually of it is. It causes the greenhouse effect because this carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere, stays in the upper layer of our atmosphere. It prevents, it stops the heat produced by our civilization, by the earth, by the solar radiation. This heat is all stopped or trapped in our atmosphere. It cannot escape outside to the outer space, and as a consequence we are boiling up like in the greenhouse. The temperature is rising because all this heat cannot escape. It is trapped, it is kept in the atmosphere by carbon dioxide. What is the source of carbon dioxide and other air pollutants? Well, it is mostly emitted by coal-burning power plants. In some countries, like Poland, unfortunately, we have a lot of power plants, elektrownie, which burn coal. During burning coal, a lot of carbon dioxide and also other chemicals is released into the air. Also transport, so cars, planes, other vehicles which burn petrol or gas, they emit big amounts of carbon dioxide, so this also ends up in the air. Also industry, production of many materials or products, especially chemicals. During the production, a lot of carbon dioxide is released into the air. A surprising fact may be that also agriculture is responsible for producing large amounts of carbon dioxide. In particular, the part of agriculture which is called animal husbandry, in Polish hodowla zwierząt. Well, why? We usually don't think about animals as a big, CO2 producers. We think that factories produce carbon dioxide, cars produce carbon dioxide, power plants produce carbon dioxide, but yes, why animals? Unfortunately, especially cows, and we keep a lot of cows for milk, for meat. They have this very special kind of digestive system, so very special stomachs. When they eat and they process or digest food, which is usually, some plants, they produce a lot of carbon dioxide and also methane, which is methane, another greenhouse gas. And in fact, we keep so many cows that they produce enormous amounts of carbon dioxide and methane. I read some data claiming that animals are the second source of carbon dioxide or methane on Earth. Also, we heat our homes very often by burning coal, and this is also another source of carbon dioxide in the air. Not only carbon dioxide, it is also other much worse pollutants that we release when burning coal in our homes. Generally, we burn something that we call fossil fuels. What is fossil fuels? Fossil fuels in Polish, paliwa kopalne. So there are three main fossil fuels: coal, węgiel, oil, ropa naftowa, and gas. Burning these fossil fuels in the cars, in the power plants, in our homes is a main source of CO2 emission and also of other contaminants or toxic fumes. Contaminants, substancje skażające, zanieczyszczenia, toxic fumes, toksyczne spaliny. So this is more or less the same thing in this case. And of course, this has some serious consequences for our health because we breathe the air constantly. Like it or not, whether it's clean, whether it's dirty, you have to breathe. And because you keep on breathing, you keep on accumulating these contaminants, toxic fumes in your system, in your body. It can have some serious consequences for your organism, including cancer. Also the pollutants. Pollutants is the same thing as contaminants, substancje zanieczyszczające, zanieczyszczenia. So the pollutants which are contained in the air, some of them, they have a tendency to mix with the rain and they become dissolved in the rain, rozpuszczają się w deszczu, and they create other chemical substances which cause what we call acid rain, kwaśne deszcze. So acid rain, of course it doesn't have to be really acidic, but it's just very contaminated rain with lots of different chemical substances. Another of our sins is using incredible amounts of plastic packaging. Nowadays, almost anything you buy is packaged. There are hardly any products that you can buy that will be without packaging. Most of this packaging is unfortunately made of plastic. And this is a major problem because we produce such huge amounts of plastic in packaging that although some of it is recycled, czyli poddawane recyklingowi, we are not able to recycle all of it. Before it is recycled, it has to be sorted. A lot of people don't do that, so plastic rubbish, plastic packaging, it ends up in the environment, but also it ends up in the as rubbish, garbage, or litter, śmieci. These three words actually mean the same thing, śmieci. They end up as rubbish, garbage, litter on a place which we called a landfill, rubbish dump, or rubbish tip. These three words in English can mean wysypisko. And when they end up on the rubbish tip, they usually stay there almost forever because plastic disintegrates very slowly. It takes hundreds of years to disintegrate, so it will stay there not only during our lifetime, but also during our children's and grandchildren's and great-great-great-grandchildren's life. As I said, plastic waste, czyli odpady plastikowe, plastic rubbish, garbage, ends up on the landfills, na wysypiskach. But unfortunately, it also ends up lying all around us in the natural environment, in the forest, lakes, rivers, and in other ecosystems. This is a huge problem because a lot of animals mistake these plastic elements for some food. They eat it, they consume it, and as a result, they become poisoned. They are poisoned by the toxic substances or toxins which are released by this plastic. But also this plastic sometimes cannot be digested, strawiony, cannot be disintegrated in their stomach. It stays there and it blocks totally their digestion, their stomachs. So these animals cannot eat anything else and they die of starvation, of hunger. We also produce a lot of sewage, ścieki. The sewage comes from our homes. We produce it in the toilet, in the bathrooms, in the kitchen. but also, which is even worse, we produce a lot of industrial sewage, czyli ścieki przemysłowe. It is worse because it contains a lot of chemicals, very dangerous chemicals. Therefore, and it is produced in large amounts and huge quantities. So this waste, home waste, industrial waste, is really, really bad. Some of the waste, especially the waste produced by homes, it is this sewage. It is treated in places called water treatment plants. Water treatment plant, in Polish, oczyszczalnia ścieków. It is a place where these, where the sewage is treated, so it undergoes some biological, mechanical, and chemical processes, and the water becomes relatively clean after that. However, a lot of sewage, especially industrial sewage, it is illegally dumped in the water, in the rivers, in the seas, and spreads all over the ecosystems. Also, if the sewage is released into the ecosystem, very often it can just soak down, so go down the ground until it reaches the groundwater. And then we have a big problem, because groundwater is the water that we drink. We don't get our bottle from the plastic bottles. We get our water mostly from the ground, sometimes from the rivers. And if this water becomes polluted, if this water becomes contaminated, well, we have a problem. This has already caused in many places. A lot of towns all over the world have had their water sources poisoned by sewage dumped into the environment. Also, tourism can be a problem for the environment. Tourism is rapidly developing. We are building more and more tourist resorts, hotels, larger and larger numbers of people go to places as tourists. This can also have some negative consequences for the environment. So, for example, wildlife habitats, ecosystems are destroyed to build hotel, to build infrastructure, to build attractions for people. Also, people want to go to natural places, places of natural beauty like national parks or some other beauty spots, and they go there in large numbers. As a result, there can be noise pollution, so animals get scared by such huge numbers of people, noisy people. Also, all this infrastructure, hotels and other utilities, they can pollute the water if it is not treated in the right way. Tourism also means a lot of transport. People, when they travel, they have to get to places somehow, so they use transport. That means increased amounts of fumes which are produced by different vehicles, cars, trains, especially planes. So this could also be a problem, as it is a source of emission of carbon dioxide and other toxic emissions. Also, human activity, especially industry, agriculture, tourism, other activities, they lead to the depletion of natural resources. What are natural resources? Natural resources are simply the natural things that we get from the environment and we use them for our own needs. So that could be anything like water, wood, plants, mineral resources like, you know, coal, metal, oil, fossil fuels. So this can lead to the depletion of the natural resources. Depletion means zużywanie, wyczerpywanie. So, for example, we take water for granted, which means we think there will always be water, there is enough water, we will always have access to water, there's no problem with water, so we don't care about it so much because we have an impression that water is everywhere and it is eternal, wieczna, it will always be there. However, the fact is, the truth is that we are slowly using up the available drinking water. So this is also a problem, the depletion of natural resources. Another problem is cutting down forests, which we call deforestation, wylesianie. We cut forests for many different reasons. We need wood for furniture, for other things, for building, for construction. But we also cut down forests to make room, to make space for agriculture, for animal husbandry, for keeping, you know, cows and other animals. Deforestation can lead to such negative things like soil erosion. So when you cut down the forest and you become very intensive farming, and the heavy rains come, and in some areas they do have heavy rains, this soil, gleba, can simply be washed away. Yes, they can be eroded, and after a few years it is good for nothing. You just can't use it, it becomes a desert. Also, it leads to loss of habitat. Habitat is a place where animals live in the wild. So when you cut down forest, you cut down homes for animals, the habitats. Especially if we are talking about such types of forests as rainforest or jungle, which is very rich habitat, home to thousands of species of animals and plants. Also, cutting down forests means we have less trees which naturally produce oxygen and absorb carbon dioxide, which means the amount of carbon dioxide in the air also goes up. So, what can we do about it? How can we stop it? How can we prevent it? How can we help the environment? Well, there are a lot of things that we can do. We just have to want to do this. So first of all, drive less. Right now, people rely on their cars for everything. We ride even the shortest, we drive the car or we ride the car, even the shortest distances. You know, sometimes it's 200 meters to the shop, we take a car. Nowadays, for example, in Poland, it is nothing special for a family to have 2 or even 3 cars. A mother has a car, father has a car, and for example, teenage son who is over 18 also has a car. We do not really need to use the car all the time. So instead of using the cars, we could use public transport. Why? Why is public transport better? Well, simply because it produces less fumes per passenger, yes, and also it uses less petrol, less fuel, paliwo, per passenger. Some of the means of public transport are also emission-free, so you have electric trams, you have electric buses, so it's a good alternative to driving a car. Also try to use environmentally friendly means of transport, such as trams, for example, or electric vehicles, electric cars, electric scooters, bicycles. Well, actually nowadays in the coronavirus pandemic time, people are afraid of travel by bus, by public transport, because you know you can get infected. It's a good chance to switch to the bicycle. It's a good chance to walk. It's a good opportunity to use, I don't know, city bikes, to use whatever you can instead of those vehicles. Also, we should try, if we can, to travel less by air. Planes are huge machines. They use a lot of fuel and produce even more carbon dioxide and other chemicals. So if you don't have to, try not to travel by planes, because they're not good for the environment. And as I said, walk wherever we can. We have stopped walking. We try to drive or ride everywhere. Really, believe me, walking is healthy, it is emission-free, and it can also, you can sometimes even save time, because you don't get stuck in a traffic jam. You ride a bicycle, you walk, you never get stuck in a traffic jam. You know exactly when you will reach work, school, or any other destination. We should sort out rubbish, okay? As I said before, some of the rubbish, some of the waste that we produce can be recycled, but if we want to be able to recycle it, first we have to sort it into different groups. It is not very difficult. You just have to want to do this. You just have to take a little time to do this, be careful, and that's it. That's simple. That's really simple. Recycle waste. Yes, so if we sort out rubbish, it will be easier to also for companies to recycle it. We can also try to recycle it by ourselves. Some things at home, for example, plastic bottles or plastic bags, the carrier bags, reklamówki, you know, they can be used more than once. So you don't have to throw them away after just single use. Also, use reusable bags, bags which you can use more than once. You can buy those big solid bags that can be used, I don't know, 50 times, 100 times before they break. So try to think about it too. Also, limit purchasing. Purchasing means buying and consumption of goods. Generally, we live in the consumer society, which is also called throwaway society. So we buy a lot of stuff even if we don't need so much. We consume it, or sometimes not. Very often we throw away things very quickly. We throw away things after a couple of months. We buy new things. Try to limit the consumption. This also helps the environment. Also, try to choose products with less packaging. You know, there are products in which you have one package, and inside this one package, every single item has also its own single packaging. So try to buy products which have natural packaging, like, for example, paper, or products which are in bulk, liceum, or products which have little packaging. We should also eat less meat and more plants. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not saying we should stop eating meat at all, but we don't really need as much meat as we normally eat. As I said before, meat production, animal husbandry, hodowla zwierząt, it takes a lot of space, so it means deforestation, produces a lot of carbon dioxide and methane. We don't really need so much meat as we eat now. We should use renewable sources of energy, czyli odnawialne źródła energii. Now we have the technology, it's getting better and better. We can use wind power. You know, you've seen the wind turbines almost everywhere. It's very clean, environmentally friendly. We can use water power, we can use solar energy. There is the technology, we just have to develop and use it. We also, in our own homes, have to try to conserve or save energy. So switch off the lights if you don't need them. Okay? Turn down the heating if you don't really need it so much, if it's, you know, too hot. So try to conserve energy in your own home as much as you can. Also, we have to save water at home. Do not leave water taps, krany, open and water running without any need. You know, sometimes people just turn on the water tap and the water is running, they go somewhere else and the water is running, and then they come back after 5 minutes, the water is still running. We don't use it, we don't need it. All right, and in the end, I have prepared the list of words which we have used today to talk about to talk about environmental destruction and also about the protection of the environment. So this is the table with the English words and another table with English words, and I suggest you can fill in this table with the Polish equivalents, with the Polish meaning of these words as a kind of homework. So if you take a look again at our lesson today, at my presentation, you will find all these words in the text, so you can try to fill in the Polish words, and I promise during our next lesson we can check this and see what are the Polish equivalents. And in the end, when you are talking about the destruction of the environment, very often you are talking about cause and effect, przyczyna i skutek. We talk about the causes, so how we destroy the environment, what causes the destruction, and then we talk about the effects of this destruction on the environment, on our life. And here are just some expressions that can help you to talk about cause and effect. These are expressions which I have already used in the lesson. For example, it leads to, to prowadzi do, it causes, to powoduje, it results in, również prowadzi do czegoś, powoduje coś. Something is a consequence of something. Coś jest wynikiem czegoś, jest rezultatem. Or at the beginning of the sentence we can say consequently, w rezultacie, w efekcie, something happens. Okay? So I think these are the useful expressions that you can use at school or in your life to talk about, generally about cause and effect, and in particular about the destruction of the environment and its causes and effects. So thank you very much for your attention. I also encourage you to take a look at our other lessons in the Kujawsko-Pomorska e-Szkoła, in which I am or I have been talking also about grammar, tenses. So those of you who are more interested in the grammar side of English, in getting to know English tenses, I also encourage you to watch other lessons which I have run so far. Thank you very much.
Panie profesorze, jest jedno pytanie. Nie wiem, czy związane z angielskim, ale spróbujmy. Co pan sądzi na temat elektrycznych samochodów? Balans między produkcją a oszczędnością CO2, jeśli moglibyśmy w 30 sekund.
Yes, of course. This is all not so beautiful and not so simple, I have to say. Of course, on the one hand, electric cars are good because they do not emit any toxic fumes, they do not produce any noise. However, on the other hand, we know that the production of such cars, especially production of batteries which they use, is not particularly environmentally friendly. So probably at this stage nowadays, the balance between the advantages and disadvantages of these cars is probably, I'm not sure about it, that's just my guess, it's about 50-50. But as these cars will become more and more energy saving, as they will be developed in the future, I think that there will be more advantages of using them.
Bardzo dziękujemy. Pan profesor Maciej Doksa, to był oczywiście język angielski dla drugiej klasy ELO. Dziękuję panie profesorze. Jeszcze taka ciekawostka. Chcemy was zachęcić do tego, żebyście troszeczkę z nami się kontaktowali, żebyście zadawali pytania, ale żebyście również pokazywali, jak u was wygląda nauka. Wystarczy wziąć telefon komórkowy i zrobić fotkę i przesłać nam po prostu na Messengera, a my ją opublikujemy. Zaczynamy od nas. Tak to u nas wygląda. Proszę bardzo, pan Maciej Doksa w klatce zamknięty. Sam osobiście robiłem te fotografie. No i widzicie, tak wygląda nasz backstage. Bardzo dziękujemy panie profesorze.
Dziękuję również. Do zobaczenia.